One of the things I love when it comes to my stream is the fact that people come in, ask me all sorts of questions, and I get to give them the information that I know off the top of my head, or I get to figure stuff out or research it. Recently on my stream, I actually had somebody come in and ask me if I could make a countdown timer without using code. Now, I've never tried that before, and I thought, well, let's see if we can do it. So with Streamer.bot, I sat and figured out how to do a countdown timer with zero code, and now I'm going to show you how to do it. Now, since we are talking about a timer, I do want to mention that I have a Divoom time gate, probably one of my favorite little gadgets here that also can show a variety of 8-bit pixel art, as well as many other features, such as your Twitch channel statistics, your YouTube channel statistics, TikTok, and many other things. Divoom is also an affiliate of mine, and I can offer 10% off your order of $50 or more with code Phoenix, and in that link down in the description. Okay, I got that out of the way. Let's go ahead and show you how you can make a countdown timer with Streamer.bot. Okay, so the first thing that I wound up doing was I wanted to make sure that I created a scene in OBS and then I set some text sources appropriately. So I made sure that we had, at first, a seconds counter and a minutes counter, and then the colon that would go in the middle. Now, the reason why I separated minutes and seconds is because we're going to have to use those independently of each other. Because if we did a normal countdown, according to Streamer.bot and according to OBS, they would do 99 seconds, 98, 97, 96, and that's not exactly what we want. And then additionally, you'll see here that I have one that says 0 second. And this is basically to create a 0 for when the seconds actually drop down into the single digits. Now, the reason we have to add a individual 0 right there is because when the text gets down to where it's single digits, it doesn't display a 0 next to it. It just displays a number, which means that it just has one place that it's showing, and it looks really odd and weird. So we also have to account for that. But once I had these sources set up, then it was time to put it all together with Streamer.bot. Now, this wasn't exactly the most easy thing to figure out because it took a few different workarounds to make it happen. So let's go ahead and start with the initiate timer, because this is kind of where it all starts. So before I even thought of the 0 seconds here, I actually just was like, okay, let's go ahead and do a set global of a minute to 1. Then the temp global of minute to min, setting with a default of 0, just in case if things go wrong. I know, and I can tell. But we needed to make sure that we were able to set the GDI text of the OBS sources. So if I was just to be in here, if I did that, you would see that this would show 0, 0. And then we would also make sure that the minutes also get counted down exactly as they should. But here in the seconds, it does need to start out as 0, 0 for a very specific reason. And that reason is because if we tried to start at any other number, we would wind up being off. So if we put 0 and then did a decrement of 1, it would start immediately going into negative. So we can't have that. The first thing we're going to see is 0, 0. Then when we go to try to do a -1, instead we're actually going to set that text to 59. Then we can start going from there and reducing the numbers. And that's why we have this 1000 millisecond delay here, is to give us that 1 second for the 0 to be there before we have to go and set up our seconds to 59 seconds. Now here we would go ahead and decrement the minute by 1. So if this was set to 1 minute here, then it's going to jump to 0 as soon as this starts to run, because it would be 0, then we'd have 59. So we have these there, then we set them accordingly. So here's the 59, like so. And then the minutes are going to be whatever the minutes are stored as, which right now that doesn't work. Don't worry, we'll fix that. You can't run it in test, that's why. But then we delay for 1 second. Then we need to do something completely different. We need to have another action that's going to do the second countdown, and we have to create a new action. So here in the second countdown, we're going to take the global temp of the seconds and we're going to decrease it by 1. So every time we're hitting this very beginning, we're going to move that number down by 1, and then we're going to get that number that it now is, and we're going to wind up setting it to the text here with our seconds. Now, I needed to add an if-else statement here, because if seconds becomes less than 10, then we need that 0 to come on screen. You know, that 0 that pops up right here, so that way we have a space. Yeah, if it becomes less than 10, we need to make sure that that 0 is appearing. Then we delay for 1 full second because you need a second before you can move on to the next second. We have this get minute in there, and I don't think we needed that. Anyway, moving on. So once we get this 1 second, we come down to an if-else statement. Now this one gets a little bit more complex, but if the seconds then equals 0, we reset to 59 seconds. Basically saying if it's 0, the next second we're going to 59 seconds all over again and starting at the beginning. And then we'll keep going. Otherwise, we're just going to repeat this exact action over again and not have to worry. So essentially what this if-else statement winds up doing is going, is it 0? No? Okay, we're going to go ahead and repeat the action, bring the number down 1, set it on OBS, set our variable accordingly, wait 1 second, check it again. Is it 0? No? Do it again. Is it 0? No? Do it again. Then when it finally hits 0 is when we finally can do a change, in which we get to the reset to 59 seconds. Now, in this action for reset 59 seconds, we wind up getting the temp global, the minutes, and we're going to say, hey, does the minutes equal 0? If so, hey, you need to shut down the timer. Otherwise, go ahead, do nothing, and continue. Now, that's an important thing to put at the beginning, because if you're already at 0 on your minutes, and you just hit 0 and triggered this action, well, you would want it to stop, not keep going. So what we need to make sure is that if the minutes are 0, the seconds are 0, your timer is done. Now, this is where you could also put in, where I had put in shutdown, you could put in something, another action that will also do a shutdown, but then can trigger something else to happen. So maybe you have a visual effect you want to have come up, like maybe you were counting down to a death or something like that, or however you want to work it, but you can add then actions that are going to trigger right as that hits 0. So once we know that, hey, that the minutes aren't 0, maybe we have 1 minute left, okay, then we can just continue on because the minutes aren't 0 yet. So we're going to bring the minutes down by 1. So if it was 1 minute, now it's 0. Now we're going to get that minute again, and we're going to go ahead and set the GDI text to that new number. Then we need to set the temp global of the seconds to 59. And that temp global of seconds needs to be brought back since we changed the number for it. And we need to make sure that that is now in this action. So here we reset our seconds value back to 59. And then here we're bringing 59 into our arguments here in this action. So that way we can go, hey, if the seconds now equal 59, do the turn off the 0 and then continue. Otherwise, do nothing. Then we set that 59 right here with the variable. And then again, we're going to delay for 1 second because we're counting down by 1 second. Then after that 1 second, what we're going to do is take that second and we're going to run it again, that second countdown. Right now it shows disabled because it is turned off. But what we're doing here is then we've already set it to 59. We go back and start the second countdown all over again. Now, if we're where the minute has gone to 0 and we're counting down to 59 and we've hit 0 on the seconds, that's where we can go to the reset 59 seconds. That's where this will come in to where if the minute has equaled 00, we're going to shut down the timer. Because if we've already hit the 0 on the seconds here, so the 0 starts here and we've recognized that it's 0, we come over here and realize that the minute is 0, both are 0, which means we need to stop this, which is where we go to shutdown timer. And all this is setting the action state of the second countdown to disable. And what that is doing is disabling the action from continuing to run because we've set it into an infinite loop where it just repeats over and over again unless something tells it to stop. In which case, when we're shutting down that action, we're telling it to stop. So if we've hit 0 in the minutes, 0 in the seconds, we fully stop everything. Now, this is the point that if you wanted something to happen after that timer has concluded, this is where you put it. You would put the seconds shut off completely. So we've ended that loop. Now you trigger anything else to happen. Whatever you need to have happen will go. Now, because we were using an if or else action to turn on this 0 here. So in order to turn that on with the if else, we had to create actions to do that. So make sure you also create a filler for one that turns it off and one that turns it on. Literally just setting the visibility state of that source on and off. Then once you have all that set up, you just have to have a trigger. That way, when you hit test trigger, you get your countdown. And that countdown will keep going until you hit 0. And then when you get down to this point, you'll notice that, bam, now we have where this is enabled, this has become its own. The seconds has become its own, and that's there. Now, this should stop right at 0. And it did. It's no longer ticking because the actions were completely stopped. The minutes and the seconds were 0, which triggered this. And really what you're winding up doing is you're creating a bunch of different actions to control individual components of this. So you have one thing to control the seconds and how that is going and causing that to be in an infinite loop, doing a check for whatever the number is and making sure that it isn't 0 yet. And if it is 0, well, then you have to affect the other one. So it is possible to build a timer without any kind of code. You can build it in Streamer.bot. It just takes a little bit of thinking and a little bit of creative thinking to figure it out. Now, how long did this actually take me to figure out? Well, I think it took me about 2 hours live on stream to do. But that's because I've spent a lot of time playing with Streamer.bot, understanding the tools it has in it and what you can do with them. And a lot of this really has to come from the fact that you have to know that you can do actions within actions. You can set a loop of actions and have them recur over and over again, and then set conditions to stop it when it needs to. And that's the key thing, is knowing how to take a loop and end it. But this also comes with the understanding of how do you work those if-else statements, using that logic in order to go, well, if this happens, I need this next thing to happen. And thinking about that in a very logical way. And then what happens if that doesn't happen? Does it need to do something else, or do you have something planned that's just going to keep going? You have to think of these things and how they're planned out. Sometimes you need to write them down. That's okay. In fact, most of the redeems I have wind up having some kind of ridiculous convoluted logic system in order to work. And what I mean by that is I have created an entire achievement system based on this idea of using global variables, logic, and knowing how to use logic in a way that I can trigger various different things. So for instance, when somebody chats in my channel, I count how many messages they're sending. And as I'm counting them, I have different things that'll happen depending on what message it is. So if the total number of messages for the entire chat is 1, then I have where, hey, you're the first person in chat. Not only do they get recognized as the first person in chat, but they also get an achievement for that. So their achievement points go up. And then I have one for second that's worth less and third that's worth less. But then beyond that, I even do where if their message, how many messages they sent, if they've sent 25 messages in the entire time they've been in my stream, like from the time they ever first started talking, they hit 25, they get achievement points. And this is all because I set up logic that if that person has sent this many messages, it's going to run a new action where the message first 25. So if I come up to my first 25 message, this winds up doing everything I need to do, where it'll set the text in OBS, it'll increment their score, and then we get that score and apply it, the display that shows up, as well as the message. So it'll say this person's score is now this person. And it's with that kind of creativity and that kind of thinking that you can really build incredibly different things with the power of global variables and if-else statements. Those two are the most powerful tools you can use when you're starting out. And just starting with a timer and understanding how that works, rebuild it, redo it, and do it over again to understand how that works. That's going to give you the basis to understand what you can do with those ideas and go further. So that's really all I have for you today, is to show you that these things can be done, even if it takes a little bit of creativity. So don't be afraid to get in there with Streamer.bot and make something really weird, unique, different, whatever. Just make something. And with that, my friends, I hope you had a great time learning how to make a timer without any kind of code. I'll see you on the next video. Bye-bye.